Welcome to our summer solstice hangout with Nassim Haramein and our guests Foster Gamble, Deborah Rosman, and Kyle Thierman. This hangout is brought to you by the Resonance Project Foundation and the New Resonance Academy. My name is Teresa Collins, and I'm on the board of directors of the Resonance Project, and I'll be hosting this hangout today. I'll start by wishing all of you a happy summer solstice. Tomorrow is actually solstice, and it's the longest day of the year, time of celebration and buoyancy. And we may be noticing that things that we've been seeding in the spring are beginning to grow and flourish. And I just love this summertime. Now, if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's actually winter solstice, where the energy is naturally moving inward. It's the shortest day. And I love how that natural balance is. Deep roots and radiant wings in perfect harmony. So let's take a moment to connect with all of those around the world who are gearing up to celebrate the solstice in some way. Just take a moment right now to be fully present and breathe and relax. And let the next 90 minutes nourish you in some way. And know that the quality of your presence has an impact on the whole. And whether you're here live with us right now, or you're listening to the recording right now, know that we're all connected. And your presence makes a difference. And we're glad that you're here. So let's get started. Our theme for the hangout today is riding the waves of change. And the Resonance Project is in Kauai, and many of us surf. And because of that, we're just naturally started to use this analogy of waves as we begin planning and executing the many tasks on our plate. It's been useful for us, and it seems that as the waves become bigger and more potent, that we really need to focus on how we ride them. And of course, with the Year of the Horse launching at the beginning of this year, that brought a powerful surge of energy and potential. So at times, we're in the groove, and everything's flowing. And at other times, the wave overtakes us. And we realize we need to pause, and we need to assess the conditions before we start moving forward again. And during it all, we've been discovering how essential it is that we learn to ride these waves together well. Because how we ride through the coming waves together will have an impact on the future that we leave to our children and our grandchildren. It's really up to us. So the intention of this hangout in this mini-series that will follow is to inspire us to harness our collective wisdom and courage and skills and mastery to the ride we find ourselves on individually and collectively. And each one of our guests today has something unique to offer to help us get started. So before I bring Nassim on camera and introduce our guests, I just want to say on behalf of the entire board of directors how proud we are of you, Nassim, and our entire team, and the great progress you and we've been making over the last few years. We have this beautiful research facility, and a top-notch team is forming, and it feels like we have a good foundation to grow and serve from now. And I think it's finally your time. I think this is your time, Nassim. And I want to thank you for hanging in all over these years. And I'm honored to be part of this team and excited that we're doing this hangout together today. So why don't you come on camera and say hello.
Hi, everybody. I was, thank you, Teresa, that was awesome. And I don't know if I'm on camera yet, but, you know, here I am in the barrel of the wave. I even have wet hair, you see. And so, yeah, totally. I think it's been quite, the last 2 years has been very exciting. And, you know, with the help of our excellent board of directors, we've been able to move forward and ride some pretty big waves and develop some really nice techniques for riding waves. And as Teresa was mentioning, you know, when the waves get bigger, your technique must improve. And so we're all working at improving our techniques. And it's really excellent that we have these guests on today to help us with our technique and riding these waves, including, you know, world renowned surfer, Carl, that's going to come on and teach us those very slight adjustments we must make in order not to go over the falls, as we call it. And I think it's a critical time in history for humanity as a whole. And we're right there at that fulcrum, at that crux, right on the, you know, edge of the wave, ready to jump in and go forward or go over the fall. And so this is what we're all working on, refining and moving forward. And it's wonderful to have these amazing guests on today to help us and to discuss all this together and kind of invite you into the conversation that goes on when we are hanging out and what goes on in our daily life personally, and as well what goes on in our common and individual research.
Thank you, Nassim. So let's introduce our guests, and we're going to start with Foster Gamble. We can shift to the next slide. So Foster is the president and co-founder of Clear Compass Media and creator, host, co-writer, and director of visual design for the globally acclaimed film Thrive, What on Earth Will It Take? And over 23 million people, at least that's what's documented, have seen this film so far, and it's been translated into numerous languages. He and Nassim have been friends and colleagues for many, many years, and he's personally one of my favorite men on the planet. So thank you for joining us today, Foster. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, and your insights are always so perfect. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much for that sweet welcome, Teresa. I can hardly think after that acknowledgement. I appreciate that, and it's a special honor for me today to be on with this group, because every single one of these people is a hero of mine, including you, Teresa. Teresa and I have worked together for at least 15 years, I think, in various projects, including Thrive. It's one of my great pleasures. And Kyle is, in full disclosure, he is my surf teacher. I'm a windsurfer and a boogie boarder, but I've only surfed once, and that's when Kyle took me out and actually got me up on several waves. A great teacher as well as a great surfer, and also I'm blessed to have him as my stepson. He's Kimberly's son. And Deborah and I have not known each other a lot, but I have been admiring her work for a long, long time in HeartMath and Global Coherence Project, and all the way back to the Christopher Hills days up in the Institute in the Trees or whatever it was. And of course, Nassim is one of my dear friends and colleagues, and really one of my heroes in science, in sport, in philosophy. So it's a great honor to be with all of you today. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Foster. So let's move next to Deborah Rosman, who is the CEO of HeartMath. And the HeartMath mission is to facilitate a fundamental shift in health, well-being, and global coherence. And they've created a methodology and training and simple practices that support them to bring that mission alive. And she's also on the steering committee of the Global Coherence Initiative, which is the website you're seeing on your screen right now. And they're committed to helping bring about a global consciousness. And GCI has been working with the Resonance Project to set up a monitoring system sensor at the research park in Hawaii. And these sensors help us to get into greater resonance with nature and the earth as we ride through these waves of change. So Deborah, thank you so much for joining us on this Hangout. And I'm sure you have a wealth of insights to share with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Teresa. I'm delighted to be here with Foster, whose work I've followed for many years, and there is a heart resonance between us, even though we haven't interacted a lot, as he said. And also Nassim, of course. I remember when Nassim was visiting HeartMath a number of years ago, and we've always known that we're on the same research mission to bring science to validate what we know intuitively and spiritually, but needs to be validated scientifically. And that's certainly what HeartMath's mission is about. And we've always been about riding the waves of change. We even used that terminology in 1990 when we first started the Institute of HeartMath, you know, where our founder, Doc Childrey, said there's going to be a lot of change coming, and people really will need simple tools to deal with the stress and get back in sync and learn how to flow with it, and all the good stuff we'll be talking about today. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Deborah. Well, lastly, and certainly not least, we have Kyle Thierman, who's a 22-year-old pro surfer who continues to create some serious waves around the world. He's the creator and host of the hit YouTube series Surfing for Change, which combines surfing great ways with making a series of short films about current issues and focusing on the power you have to create a better world through everyday decisions. He's also a pro surfer, as I said, and I put a picture in here of him surfing so you can see his style going through a nice barrel. And I have to say, personally, I'm so proud of you, Kyle, because I helped him with his first grant proposal for this series some years ago, and I'm thrilled at how much this project and you have blossomed. So thank you for joining us in this Hangout today, and I love having your youthful and practical wisdom added to the mix.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the call. It's really exciting to be a part of such a high-level conversation, and you know, although mainstream surf media doesn't usually talk about it, there are a lot of surfers who are really interested in the conversation of new energy technologies, you know, and what's really going on behind the scenes. So. Might surprise you, but not all surfers are just stoners like Spicoli. They're actually interesting conversations going on. So it's fun for me to be able to be on this call and yeah, talk with such smart people about such relevant issues.
You're right. Thank you, Kyle.
And Teresa, I don't know if you saw, but yeah, Teresa helped me with our first grant application to make our first video, and that was way back when, and we just released our latest video, which is on the whole anti-GMO movement happening with surfers on the Hawaiian Islands. And if you guys check out the latest Surfer magazine, The Big Issue, Patagonia did a 2-page spread of the whole GMO issue and our video. So it was pretty cool to have them get behind the movement and promote it in the most widely seen surf publication in the world. So that was fun. We just saw that yesterday. It just came out.
Congratulations, Kyle. You are definitely making some big waves. So let's go to our first kind of exploration for this call today, and this is really setting the kind of foundation for our conversation. And I'm going to start with you, Nassim, and then the rest of you can kind of add your voices as you feel inspired. So when we say the phrase "riding the waves of change," what does that evoke in you personally and collectively? So we can begin to set the foundation for this conversation. So Nassim, why don't you start, and then we'll see who else wants to follow.
Well, for me, it invokes a lot of different things, you know, at different levels. And, you know, with my tendency to do what I do best, I tend to think of the universal waves that are occurring in all modes of operation in the universe, from gravitational waves to electromagnetic waves, to, you know, fluid dynamics in plasma and so on, and eventually to biological structures oscillating and human beings riding these waves.
I like that. Well, maybe I'll add, since I'm coming in from a scientific perspective too, in terms of our research at HeartMath, and how the heart waves, the electromagnetic waves that each heartbeat produces, actually reflect our emotional state. You can see the pattern of how we're feeling. So if we're frustrated or angry or anxious, or we're not in sync with ourselves, these waves get very chaotic, and we are feeling loving and caring and connected and appreciative. We're in the flow, and these waves get very harmonious, or what we call coherent, like a sine wave. And so it's really physiologically true that there's waves of change affect and perturbate our heart waves, our brain waves. And so the whole idea that I try to do personally is get in sync, to get back in sync, to reset my system and ride my inner waves again harmoniously. And then, of course, there are planetary waves of change that we all communicate. If you look at the Earth's field as something that is actually a carrier wave of biological information, then that carrier wave is we're all being influenced by each other's emotions. So it's very cool.
Oh,
Foster or Kyle, do you want to jump in? It's like Nassim started, but I think we lost him for a second.
Sure, I could talk about just kind of how what it makes me think of. Just being a surfer, you know, the best surfers are the ones that make it look the easiest. And surfing at its core is a very simple thing. You know, it's basically like the wave pushes and you push back, and you look for the most powerful points within the wave, you know, to push back on, and that's what gives you speed and allows you to have lots of fun on the wave. But I think that that's an analogy for the work that we're all working to do, and obviously the work that probably a lot of people listening in on this call are doing, probably really important, really passionate work. But it always reminds me to just focus on the most important and most powerful aspects of any story you're trying to tell. You know, for me, it's video production. We do, you know, short documentaries on all these different social and environmental issues, and no matter how many bells and whistles there are in each story we tell, there are usually just 2 or 3 components of the story, you know, whether or not we're covering GMOs or we're covering plastic pollution, that we need to get across in the story, and those are the most powerful points of the wave. And then it's really helpful for me because I have those down, you know, literally I'll write them down on a whiteboard, and then I can just keep going back to those points, or the core tenets of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that's always helped ground me whenever, you know, you're going over the falls and things are kind of in turmoil, is just to have those few core tenets that you can always go back to when you're doing your important work out in the world.
Great.
Yeah, I'm delighted at the opportunity with with the Resonance Project audience to be able to go into the science of this a little bit, because the first thing that came up for me when I was thinking of the waves of change was actually there's a guy named Ilya Prigogine who won a Nobel Prize for his theory of dissipative structures, where he basically pointed out that there aren't any things in the universe, that even atoms and cells and molecules and so forth are simply geometries. They're shapes of energy flow. So it's a reminder to me that I'm actually made up entirely of waves of change at every level. And then I'm involved in my own waves of change, every impulse inside of me, every part of my intellect, my intuition, my intention, my emotions, my physical sensations, they're all waves of change. And then I take all of that out into the world and start dealing with the waves of change that are, coming at each one of us. And I've never seen a more, in a sense, risky time to be alive, and at the same time, I've never seen a more exciting time in history that I would want to be alive, where one person can make such a difference with the media, technologies, communication capacities that we have now. So as I look out into the world, I see some kind of in waves, some collapsing waves of economic collapse and environmental collapse, and where everybody knows that we're on the brink at any moment of nuclear, chemical, or biological holocaust. So there's some serious waves that we're in the process of not trying to wipe out, or trying not to wipe out on. But most of your audience would also be aware of the dynamic of geometric duals, where every time that there is a shape that is contracting, there's its dual, which is expanding at the same time to keep the equilibrium, to keep the balance. So Kimberly and I have been blessed in the Thrive movement to be traveling around and just meeting with people in cities all over the world and seeing the phenomenal solutions that are emerging. So at the same time that we're seeing this risk of collapse, we're seeing the emergence of alternative currencies, of alternative, truth-telling media, of alternative energy, of alternative ways of growing food, even though it's strange to think of, organic polyculture or permaculture as alternative, because it's been the way it's done for thousands of years. In this day and age, it's actually alternative. And people are exploring alternative education and true freedom, more morality-based philosophy. And what we're seeing is that the core of all of this is the challenge of recognizing and honoring the wholeness of natural systems. And when we do that, then we can restore those natural systems, and in the process of doing that, we're actually riding the waves of change that's represented by the energy moving through the torus that we are and that we're completely embedded in.
Yeah, beautifully said, Foster.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have Nassim back there? He is. Hey, Nassim.
I guess I wiped out.
Do you want to add something to that?
I thought that was great. I just caught the end of it though, and because I was off the air there for a minute. But yeah, absolutely. Just as an oscillator in a laboratory, when you put energy into it, when you add waves, the waves typically eventually get to level of incoherency and chaotic modes, and very extreme modes where things seem to want to rip apart and everything is looking very chaotic. And actually, if the tensile strength of the object, like the surface of a balloon, doesn't have enough strength, bonding power, it will rip at one point during that time. But if it does, if it can sustain that moment of chaos, then all of a sudden it transfers to the next harmonic relationship with the system, and then it harmonizes, and all of a sudden it becomes very quiet, very harmonious, very high energy. And in terms of information theory, we could say it has much more information throughput capability. And so I think that we are in that moment of that chaotic mode, and some of the modes of oscillation are moving towards harmonic relationship, and it's popping in and out. And I think, well, speaking for myself, at least in my personal life, I think in our global life as well, and I think that we have this possibility, we have this choice, and we're given more and more tools to make that choice, to get into the harmonic relationship with the new operating system and the new energies of our planet.
I really like the research that's happening, not just at HeartMath, but lots of places on the harmonics, the relationship between the Earth's fields, our planet, our individual inner electromagnetic fields, the waves. We're all so interconnected, the interconnectivity research going on, because I think, you know, there's what we need to do individually in our responsibility, and then there's also what we can do collectively together and in harmony with the Earth. That's part of the passion I have about what we're doing with the Global Coherence Initiative and the Resonance Project. I mean, that's what it's all about too, is how do we really establish that resonant frequency that can entrain more people's hearts and minds into that, so the global humanity can be lifted. To me, that's what's going to enable us, as Foster was saying, to really make the choice that's going to uplift humanity rather than go down. I'm very optimistic because I think we're on the edge of that tipping point.
One of the things that I love about what Deborah and her organization is doing is that they're not only exploring the coherence of the heart within themselves and scientifically, but then they're going out and really testing it in themselves by taking it right into the heart of the what sometimes behaves like institutional beasts with the governments and the corporations and so forth, but really going in and testing all of this out and offering the opportunity for coherence and for further peace and all the intuition and insights and love that come from that. So I really admire that you guys are willing to do that on a daily basis, because it has to be done. Thank you.
That's true. We've been in the trenches, as I call it, for the last 20 years, and actually not even being overt about our real consciousness or spiritual mission, because when we're working with the U.S. military, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force, it hasn't been appropriate. But out of care, our care has been go into the belly of the beast, as you're calling it, or go into these dense organizations in the language and in the entry points that they are hurting, but they're also willing to listen and receive. And so resilience is one of those words that everybody wants now. And don't you need resilience to be a good surfer, to ride the waves of change, to do anything? And so the Department of Defense just adopted HeartMath's definition of resilience.
Oh, great.
And we're working with all the Army Wellness Centers all over the world for our resilience tools. As Nassim said, there's more and more tools coming for people to get back in sync. How do you reboot the internal system when you've fallen off your inner surfboard? And certainly for the military, it's the things they want are like situational awareness. How do we become more cognitively and responsible so we don't make as many mistakes? And it's, of course, they're all returning home now. How do we deal with this PTSD? But resilience crosses all organizations, healthcare, corporations, individuals. It's what we all want and need more of, is that ability to flex with change. So yeah, that's been wonderful to finally be able to open up and be more ourselves of what we're really about here, too.
Yeah, and also, just from coming from being the youngest one on the call, I think it's really important work what you guys at HeartMath are doing, just based on how many young people there are who, as you said, intuitively know what's really going on, but need the scientific evidence behind it to really bring it forward in conversations that might be uncomfortable. To really have it be backed up, I think, is such an important. It's such an important thing to be doing, and I see you guys as such a cool conduit, for working within the current system that we're living in, and also then taking people to places that they've never been.
Thank you, Kyle. It's wonderful to see more and more young people getting involved in all the things we're doing, because you're the future. And so far it's been a lot of baby boomers who had the vision back in the 60s, and we've held it through to now. But now it's really time the people who are blueprinted, or whatever you want to call the inspired, who intuitively know, and that's your role, is to help bring this to the next level. Your generation, hopefully you can utilize all the tools and technologies that the older generations developed, and we merge it all together, because we all came here at this time, I believe, to serve this incredible wave shift, planetary shift going on, and it takes science, it takes intuition, it takes tools, it takes our collective hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to comment on that. I think that's really, really an important point, is that it takes the whole being. And it takes scientists that have a heart, and that I always talk about the brain as this analogy to a radio station that's being tuned to certain frequency of information in the structure of the field and the structure of the vacuum. And I'm actually running mathematics on this model to actually map out the brain interaction with the field. But at the same time, if the brain is the radio set, then the heart is the dial that tunes that radio set to the appropriate coherent resonance frequency to obtain the appropriate information and be able to move forward in an appropriate way, individually and collectively, to create a sustainable path for all of us. And so that's very, very crucial. And so the integrated being, and the integrated being is critical to the integrated society and to the sustainability of our world.
It seems like we're naturally moving to the next part of what we wanted to share. We're just naturally transitioning it. So I'm just going to bring our next topic deeper into the process. So in this segment, I wanted to have you guys share principles or practices or insights that you find useful as you ride the wave of change in your own life. And consider what you might share that would empower the members of the community listening to bring greater awareness and mastery into their own ride. So whoever would like to start. I know we've got a lot of rich things to share.
Well, maybe I'll jump into, first of all, just to define principle, because principles are right at the core for me as a scientist and as a philosopher. If you ignore principles, you're going to crash, run into something very quickly. So people confuse a lot opinions or ideas or theories with actual principles. And so I looked up principles in the dictionary last night, and there's two primary definitions. One of them is an accepted or professed rule of conduct. An example is when somebody refers to a person of good moral principles. So that's kind of a notion of ethics, something like that. But then the second one is much more scientific. It's that a principle is a fundamental, primary, or general law or truth from which others are derived. And the example they give is the principles of modern physics. And in my experience, if you go deep enough in either one of these, they come together. Because if you are actually operating from so-called good moral principles, it's not because you just had a good idea, it's because you're operating in relationship to the natural principles of the universe. And so these two definitions of principles, I think, really combine into one when the code of conduct is based on universal natural law. And once again, this goes back to the wholeness of natural systems. If you honor someone else's wholeness by not doing harm to them, if you honor an ecosystem by growing your food or exploiting resources, but keeping the wholeness of that system, if you do a business transaction with someone and keep your integrity and your transparency, you keep your word, then all of that nurtures life, and it manifests the experience, in my view, of being in love, which is not just a feeling you happen to have for somebody sometime, but it's actually the experience of being in harmony with that natural flow. And to me, that is resonance. And the principle that I want to discuss briefly, and just bring up for other people's input as well, is perhaps the most important one that I've learned in my life is what I call the principle of recreation. When you experience something, but then you recreate it in your own consciousness. And it may sound abstract, but it's as simple as listening. When your child is talking to you, if you're distracted or ignoring them, they will say it over and over and over again until you finally tune into them, and they know that you have recreated their request or their comment in your own consciousness and responded to it, and then that communication disappears. When someone, for many years I trained and taught in the martial art of Aikido, and when someone plays the role of attacker, now all that energy is coming towards you. If you go up against it, you're going to get slammed. If you turn and go with it, just like a surfer needs to do on the wave, then when you completely recreate the intention of the attack and the physicalness of the attack, the direction of the energy, then the attack disappears. And your energy joins with them, and all of a sudden there's the resonance between you, and the energy goes to the next level because it's amplified, it's resonant, rather than diluting or conflicting. I'll mention a couple of other examples, because this is not, even though it's not talked about much, this is not some esoteric philosophy. This is what we're experiencing all the time. When you feel an emotion, if you feel anger and you resist it, it'll take over your body and your behavior. But if you go with it responsibly, it'll disappear, and then the sadness will come up underneath. And if you allow yourself to feel ride the wave of sadness, it doesn't last forever. It disappears. And then, in my experience, the fear that's underneath that comes up. But if you're also masterful, if you ride the wave of fear, then that also disappears, and you go back into that experience of being centered in your motive flow, in the very life force itself. And then if you allow that to be, then the wave will expand instead of contracting you, and it'll move into excitement, and then to enthusiasm, and into joy, and then finally into bliss, where it really is encompassing your entire body. And it's the same thing in consciousness itself. One more example I'll mention is that when I studied at the Monroe Institute for a while back in Virginia, where they've been studying the altered states of consciousness for 40 years now, and they teach you to, in your meditations, to both visualize a toroidal wave surrounding your body, and then also to chant what they call a reball or a resonant balloon, to chant, find your resonant frequency that goes into sync with that visualization of the torus energy field that you truly are. And when you do that effectively, it creates a portal where the energy rises, your energy body moves out to its next level beyond the physical, and that's where the astral travel, the etheric exploration, that's the portal where that begins. So that awareness, the mastery of riding that wave of consciousness, has been suppressed for centuries by people who want to control others politically or economically. But more and more, there have always been secret societies that have maintained that knowledge, and now, especially through the internet and through all of the workshops and so forth, and through organizations, like HeartMath, that knowledge is becoming universally known. So it can't be sufficiently suppressed anymore. So I see the entire planet now beginning to ride that type of wave of consciousness, as well as physicality or emotions.
Yeah, totally. This is really, really amazing what you were just saying, because I mean, this is why I love you, Foster. That is so awesome.
Thank you.
I love the way you're able to bring it to the individual and how we experience our life and how the decisions we make every minute during the day. And I'm really, for me personally as well, it's been a long journey to be able to find the proper response to some of these emotions that come up during the day, during the week, during the month, and so on, as you know. And I've learned so much from from what you've said, and as well from my personal capacity to actually love myself and be okay with me. Be okay with my my weaknesses and my strengths or whatever is going on, and just accept it as is and ride it. Be what I am. Be transparent about what that is, and open up and stay open. And that's been a continuous effort, day to day, minute by minute, week by week. It's almost like doing a AA training, or something, 1 minute at a time, and trying to maintain that state of balance and openness. And I think that there is definitely tools that can help do that, like some of the tools that HeartMath produce, for instance, and so on, and as well practices, yoga practices, meditation practices, all these things that helps us throughout the day to refine that point of center. Right? In all the physics I've written, I always come back to, whether mathematically or actually theoretically or philosophically, I always come back to this point where there's that stillness at the center of the spin, where the center of the hurricane, the singularity at the center of the black hole that centers galaxies, and so on. And that place, I feel, is present in me as well. All the atoms that I'm made of, but as well from their collective relationship in the center of my body. I feel this place literally in its geometry, in its reality, that I can go to, that I can come back to when I feel like all of a sudden I'm caught in the spin, which can happen pretty easily in the world today, whether it's stuck in traffic, being cut off, or in the lineup at the bay getting cut off by another surfer, or whatever it is, or maybe much larger stakes where it can be much more painful or have much larger impact on my life. In all of these cases, if I can do this, if I can accept, love myself, and open, and stay open, then I can ride the changes. I can ride the growth that's occurring, the growth within me as well, the wisdom that I'm gaining from all these experiences. Yeah. And that's what's so exciting, is that I feel the growth. Yeah. And that's what eventually leads me back to the joy and back to the ecstasy of being in harmonic relationship with the environment.
Yeah. I really want to, before we move on, I just want to acknowledge that I've been able to watch this over the years, to watch you riding that wave of personal growth, because as we all know, and it's called, science is not enough. None of these things stand on their own sustainably. And I remember you, when we first met, you telling me the story of, when you had done your research year after year out by yourself in the desert, and you finally knew that you had what you were looking for. And you had your papers beside you as you were meditating by the fire by yourself, and you started to get visions of how challenging it was going to be to take this to the world and have people think you were crazy or be afraid of new knowledge and all, just the struggles that it would involve, and that you were seriously considering just throwing your papers in the fire and taking the some kind of easy path. And you didn't. You didn't quit then, and you came out and you went on your speaking tour. And I remember when we met, you had been stretched pretty thin because not that many people were getting it. You didn't know if it was going to be worth it, and you were really wondering. And you didn't quit, and you kept going and have developed the interpersonal skills to be able to ride the wave of running an organization and dealing with the public and all the details and everything. And this is a great example of what we're all needing to do to actually fulfill our dreams in the world. So thanks for not quitting.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for being along with me for the ride. Thanks for all your support.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really resonated with you saying, Nassim, was about self-acceptance. It's, to me, in this whole global shift that we're all experiencing, I really feel there's a consciousness shift where we're all kind of tuning into some of the same inner heart. I call it heart directives, or the principle of heart intelligence. People sometimes call it the same downloads, meaning there's something we're all learning and experiencing together while we're going through our individual growth path. And one of the things that has truly, even though I've been, like perhaps yourself and others, a 40-year meditator and done very committed to personal growth for many, many years, there was another level of just self-acceptance on a cellular level that I needed to just really get deep in my heart to believe and be. Let Debbie be Debbie is what I call it, at a really deep level. And what that does is it release some of the hopefully last, but it doesn't matter when you really accept yourself. It releases some of those levels of the ego triggers or the vanities that have been imprinted over the years from culture or whatever that we've been perhaps working on for so many years, gaps, blind spots, whatever people call them. But the opportunity collectively now to have the new consciousness pitch and heart intelligence to see into those things so that we really can love them, accept them, allow them to move through. But we have to co-create that with higher intelligence, and the opportunity of the shift now is to be in those higher frequencies and be able to love ourselves, accept ourselves as a mother would a child, and encourage that child to grow and become her or his real self. And that self-acceptance, to me, that self-forgiveness, that true compassion, that next level that we have for ourselves is what will enable us to have that next level of unconditional love, not just as a concept, but as a real reality in our interactions with each other. And so that's certainly something that's been in my heart lately. I know that when I get triggered, whether it's just impatience with my computer crashing again or the long line at the bank or whatever, it's those moment-to-moment choices. What am I going to do right there that determines whether I drain energy and lose my higher awareness or gain energy and can get back on my inner surfboard. And that's where, to me, the intelligence, the power of the heart, the role of the energetic heart, what we've been researching, heart math, isn't just the physical heart, but what is this energetic heart that connects us all, but is also the main trunk line to our higher self, our soul, our spirit, and us connecting together there. That's what excites me. It's that opening that's happening. And I know we feel that just talking with each other here. We're all in love with each other. I feel that. And so that's where we're growing.
Thank you so much. I just want to add to that I think from that place, when you're in that place, then when you're when you're in the trenches and you're walking and you're making the change and making the effort, then from that place you have the most impact, you have the most power to transform yourself, but as well everything around you, including, you know, helping making significant change on the planet. Because I think you're like in your power, you're in your path then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Carl?
Yeah, so what comes up for me when I think of principles of riding the waves of change is that every day you go surfing, there's going to be different sized waves. You know, the ocean's going to be doing different things. You're going to need to take out different sized surfboards for different kinds of waves. I mean, people always, I have a shed full of surfboards, and when I take people back there, they're like, "Why do you have 10 or 20 surfboards?" And I try and make the analogy that it's like a golfer with golf clubs. You know, you need to take out a different surfboard for different conditions. And I think that it's the same when it comes to talking about the issues that we're really passionate about. And for me, the thing that gets me going the most is the branding of our individual issues, because I think that our issues are only as powerful as our ability to communicate them effectively with others. And if you're talking about new energy technologies, you're probably going to frame your conversation differently if you're talking to your best friend than if you're talking to, like, Uncle Joe who loves Fox News and has never heard about any of this kind of stuff. So I am really passionate. I'm really passionate about just effective communication in this really critical time. As I think that there's a tipping point where there are a lot of people who are really open to this new and important information, but haven't yet been exposed to it. And I think that it's really important as I'm moving forward, and as we're all moving forward, to really remember, who we're talking to in different situations, and have different ways and different analogies to explain what we're doing in the most effective way possible. Because, I mean, to be honest, it's just been really frustrating to me to see a lot of people who are really passionate about certain issues, and they kind of are they think that, the truth will set us free, and that if they just, that it's like a lot of the fatal or the futile efforts of different, like, environmental movements, where they think, like, oh, if we just tell people all these, like, horrible statistics about how all the trees are getting cut down, and there's 20,000 trees and all that stuff, and people, I think, just now are starting to realize is that people don't necessarily change behavior off of these numbers. They change them off of emotion. They change them off of how well you can frame your argument. And I think that you all are very well adept at doing that. So I commend all of you for doing that. And I just think that it's so important for any of the listeners out there, as we're out there speaking our truth. And in a lot of ways, I think the most important part is just to be true and passionate as you're communicating this stuff, but also to be very strategic and know who you're talking to when you're out communicating these messages. And that's something that's been the most challenging for me, and also the most exciting when I created the Surfing for Change series, because we cover all different kinds of issues. And I mean, our goal really is just to kind of be the hook for someone who's never heard about, a big environmental or social issue, and just to kind of hook their interest. And really, we really simplify these issues, and then in a hope that will then get their motor turning in a sense that, I always say we target people who won't sit through the hour-and-a-half long documentary. We get people to just pique their interest so that then they'll sit down and watch Thrive, because they get interested in one of these issues. But that's just that, that's one principle that came up for me, is, just looking at the wave of energy that is obviously huge. People want to hear this information that you all have to share, and you're the surfer, and you got to take out the right surfboard for each day.
I love it.
That's right.
I'm going to jump in with a little Kyle story, because I want to offer this for the potential inspiration of anybody of any age who's listening, but especially for the younger folks who are going out and starting to cut their path in the world. The generation before Kyle, the top-level pro surfers and so forth, when he was what they call a Grom, when he was a little kid growing up surfing, the generation ahead of him had gotten hooked into some very dangerous behavior with hard drugs and violence and criminal activity, and a lot of the parents were really concerned about the surfers coming up. And I have to say that Kyle was willing and able to ride his own inner impulse to take a different path. And because Kyle likes to have a good time. He's got high ambitions for contributing to the world, and he's dedicated to having a good time while he's doing it, which is really an inspiration to me. And so as he was getting interested in things besides surfing in the world, that wasn't necessarily a cool thing to do in Santa Cruz. So it was sometimes, I think, challenging for him socially to stand up for what he believed in when it wasn't the norm. And pretty soon his friends started catching on, and they recognized that he was having a good time, and he was being successful, and he was making a difference and being recognized in the world. And they started joining in. A whole bunch of them make a movie together, almost an annual version of a surf film called Get Rad, that it just represents the absolute best of riding the waves of change and having a good time doing it. And I'm happy to say that he and his group have transformed the surf culture in Santa Cruz. So that now as the Groms are growing up, they're looking at these older guys who treat them nicely, who are having a good time, they're eating healthy, they're having a great time with their sport, and they're making a difference in the world. So I can't think of a better example of riding both the inner wave of change while confronting the outer waves of change. So I congratulate you, Kyle.
Thanks, Foster. Appreciate it.
I love what you said too, Kyle, and the one thing that I thought was so profound that I want to really click on is being able to connect with people where they're coming from, being able to know how to language what someone can hear instead of preaching at them, because even if you got the so-called truth, it's not going to connect unless you really are listening to a person's heart and you're speaking. You'll know intuitively how to language things as we listen deeply to what are the heartfelt concerns of whoever it is, whatever their religion, belief system, political focus, because most of that is still imprinted from how we were brought up or the social environment we've been conditioned in. That's not who the person really is. And so I know I've had to learn a lot about that in taking HeartMath and how to language it for teachers in schools, for doctors and health professionals, for children of all ages in different kinds of school environments. The military is only one. For corporations, I mean, when I say we've been in the trenches, part of that is just what you're saying is how do you talk about something like the heart and spirituality and going back to your heart to listen to your inner voice, and what words do you put around that is going to be speak to people and get through the density of any one of our belief structures. And it's different for teachers. It's different for talking to people who have strong political beliefs one way or another, or any kind of strong opinions. And that's where the science can help so much. That's where I feel all of our scientific mission is really led by that neutral quality that can get underneath belief structures, but at the same time our own hearts are the tuning fork, are the, what did you call it, Nassim, the radio dial that can tune to the heart of another, and really get more of that intuitive hit of what would be the most caring thing to share your heart and truth with them. And I feel that's the next level of human consciousness and coming together and bonding and evolution is we've got to be able to hear each other's hearts beneath all the differences and communicate at that level. And then it'll widen. The heart will open and people will open more to their own common sense and their own inner voice will start saying, yeah, maybe I don't want to pollute the environment as much, and then of course the facts and figures will make more sense. Anyway, that's my vision of how it will unfold in my experience in working in the trenches of how it does unfold with the teachers or the corporate executives that that we work with. And we go in because it's stress and resilience, but at the same time, when you hear them, you know they have they could be strong Republican political beliefs or strong evangelical Christian beliefs, and you have to find a way through that to the heart of that's beyond all that in order to really communicate. And that's been a real journey for me, and a real gift of my personal growth is to learn more and more how to do that. And I'd love to be able to give that to young people more, so that you don't have to spend years learning. We don't have time, and your own hearts and souls know how to do that more intuitively. And I mean, you were talking about tools and techniques. A lot of the HeartMath tools, including our technology, the M-Wave and Inner Balance technologies, are to help people get in heart rhythm coherence, get in sync inside, because they get beyond their belief systems when they do that. It's sort of like a Trojan horse to get outside of the mindsets. And when you get in that flow inside your heart and self, then you're more open to hearing each other at that level. So that's been part of our mission with all the techniques and tools and technology of HeartMath, and just really wanting to offer that more to the world, and see how we're all really connected together and collaborate, co-create.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I think, Deborah, you made a very important point there too, is that one of the key to opening that door for many, many people is science, because data is data.
Yeah.
And math is math, and it either adds up or it doesn't. And when it does, it's remarkable. And it's not attached to any prior beliefs or concepts or background or any of that. It's straight up what's up with what we are examining, whether it's an atom or a universe, or the growth rate of an economy or the decline of an ecosystem, the temperature of the earth, and so on. And that is the crux of the issue, is that the data, the science has to be addressed. This is why very early on, I philosophically understood most of the thing I eventually wrote in mathematics. But it was critical for me to write it in mathematics, first of all, so it was precise, but as well so it would be taken out of dogma, taken out of concepts of, faith or so on, but brought into something that, no, this is actually the mechanics on how it works, and here's the math, and look at what the math is telling us. And what is it telling us? Well, it tells us that everything is interdependent, everything is connected, everything is actually emerged from a fundamental field and returns to a fundamental field, and that it has infinite potential in every point, that all information is accessible from every state, and so on. And so this not only does the consciousness and the awareness, is supported by the math, but the math, or at least the science, the data, whether it's data or math, the science can support the awareness, evolve the awareness by, giving us deeper views into the details of the mechanics of how this whole, experience we call life occurs. And that's so critical. And it makes a big difference. And I, just to finish on that, one of the largest challenges we have as a result is that these scientific efforts are typically very weakly supported on in our society currently, because they are not well understood. They are not necessarily accepted, and and this is where the challenge comes from, because in order to have the good data to help getting the people at large to support it and understand it. We need the support to produce the data, and this little negative feedback loop has been dragging us for a significant period of time, at this point. And this is the crux, I think, right there is are we gonna be able to produce enough awareness to get enough support to get the science to go to the next level, to help the awareness to go to the next level, and so on? Are we gonna be able to change that little negative feedback into a positive feed forward and birth a new, relationship to the world?
Hmm. A lot of people looking forward to riding that wave.
I think the key to that, to unlocking what you're saying, is we have to have the care, the intelligence to ask what is most emotionally relevant to people, what is going to build the bridge. Because the masses aren't going to jump immediately to your wonderful research, Nazim. So maybe it's, that HeartMath was trying to reach, our goal is to reach the masses at a level where we can get an emotional shift at least one level up, and the heart being open with enough people and to open the field, right?
Right.
To open the field of the heart.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Right. So I think, that's where health and wellness hits people, their own longevity, their own, emotional concern about that. Trying to touch that. At least that's been our strategy in terms of what will be emotionally relevant to people. Are they prepared to listen to the data? And we know, looking at the news, there's still, a lot of people aren't listening to even basic health data or climate change. They don't believe it. A huge percentage of the population doesn't even buy into the science of climate change. Part of that's the religious belief systems that they are part of, or they're, where they hang out. And I'm thinking, okay, what is universal that will touch people beyond all that? And,
You're right.
Deborah, I'd love to ask you one question to go a little deeper on that, because I think the science really helps to get people in the room who might not be interested in meditation or relaxation, that type of thing. But when you're in the room with Army officers or corporate managers or something like that, there must be some moment when they actually let go and start riding some sort of inner wave. Can you describe, do you see themes, like what has them actually let go at some moment, or what that's like for them?
Yes, that's a great question. This took a number of years to refine and then replicate. Basically, they're in the room because they want to learn how to have more cognitive function, or they want to learn how to be more resilient or manage stress. That's what's emotionally relevant. We go in and we first give them science, how the heart and brain work, and what that fight-flight response is, and then we teach them a tool or technique that was been scientifically validated, which is how to shift to the heart. Because now they understand mentally the science that the heart communicates to the brain and sends more information to the brain about how the body feels than the other way around, and that's like blows their mind, because they all think everything's up here in the head. And then that in order to really make those shifts they want and get that empowerment and that self-regulation they want, they have to go to the heart, and that's a big deal. So even, can you imagine a soldier, and you can't say it in a squishy New Age way. You have to say, okay, let's focus the attention on the center of the chest and pretend like the breath is flowing in and out of the center of your chest, and breathe at this certain rhythm, this certain wave, and we show the slides of what that looks like, and they're trying to get in this heart coherent waveform. And when you do that, we know it's going to synchronize your brain waves, and you're going to be more centered and have more objectivity and more mental clarity. Again, the words, the language, as Kyle said, that are relevant to them. As soon as they do that shift to the heart, and then we demo it with the M-Wave on the stage, showing somebody coming up there, one of them, a person from the audience hooked up, and they see when they've been, we ask them to recall something stressful, and they see the jaggedy heart rhythm, and then we take them through that technique, and they see the instant change in their heart wave to that harmonious, coherent waveform. the penny drops throughout the whole audience.
Wow.
Because everybody's got a heart. Everybody's been there before. Everybody goes, wow. And part of what gets them to that shift is something that is in their life that was positive, a loved one, a pet, their dog, their cat. It doesn't matter what, but something that they have valued that's connected them with that heart appreciation more. Or in the military, it's like their patriotism. It's still a heart feeling.
Yeah.
They care about their country. What do you care about? So you get to that feeling of what is emotionally relevant, that deep core value. And they see the physiology, they see the science, they see their heart rhythm shift in real time, and you can feel the shift in the room. And now you've got an openness, and now you can take it the next step. And the tools need to be practiced, but as they do that, they get a baseline shift. And that's science. The coherence becomes more natural, and they're able to refer back to it like their center, and they're able to make better choices and have more clarity in the moment and manage their reactions and their triggers to what somebody said or saying things they later regret. The real practical street stuff that is relevant to them is how to apply that. And then hopefully from there they become more open to messages like GMO and environment. The heart truth can come out, but it's from within them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That it's the moment when they let go into riding the heart wave.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's my joy when I see that moment. I feel fulfilled. Yeah.
I think we lost Teresa. She might have dropped off on the internet. We're having internet incoherence.
In our heart coherence, though.
That's right. Coherent. So it's all good.
Yeah.
Well, that reminded me of something that I wanted to ask Kyle too, because I'm really interested in like the moment, because literally that's all there actually is. We can in the moment we can think about the past, we can worry about the future, but it's actually all in the moment. Kyle, can you give us any impression when you're dropping in on a 2 or 3 story wave at Mavericks, and everything is on the line? Can you say anything about what you do in your own consciousness to stay on that wave?
Yeah, I think that surfing a wave like Mavericks is obviously like a very visually cool thing, so people are always like, oh my, like, what's it like to surf Mavericks, but I've been surfing my whole life, so surfing bigger waves is kind of just like the next step for challenging myself, and I think that it's like that with everything, whatever it is that you do, you constantly are looking to push yourself in new ways, and so I don't see it to be that much different from just anyone else doing something that they're passionate about, and maybe they're afraid of public speaking, and then they start practicing public speaking in little audiences, then they start going into classrooms, then they get more and more comfortable with it, and then by the time they're on stage and there's 5,000 people in the room, someone's like, oh my god, I can't believe how you can get up there, but they've practiced so much that it's not really that crazy of a thing.
Yeah.
And for me, the experience of surfing really big waves is it's you just focus on 1 or 2 really simple things that you can kind of come back to. So I mean, surfing big waves, I just come back to my breath, because it's really important in those situations where there's a big set coming and you might get caught inside on a 30 or 40 foot wave. It's really important to keep your heart rate slow so that you don't waste the oxygen. So I just focus on my breath. I focus on my breathing, and then you just have like a little mantra. Like if I'm getting beat by a 30-foot wave or something like that, it's like I picture my heart going slow like molasses, and I just picture like molasses going out of a jar, and just like how slowly like molasses or honey moves, And then I just kind of picture myself moving like molasses, and like my heart and everything going really slowly. And then, if I'm under for a really long time, and I'm starting to kind of feel like I'm going to freak out, I go through this technique where I start thinking of every person I know whose name starts with the letter A. So I'll be like Andy, Andrea, Alvaro, or whatever, and then it'll go to B, and it kind of just gets your mind away from things. But I've just found that whenever you're out doing something like surfing a really big wave or whatever it is in your life, just focusing on one or two really simple core things that are really applicable are really helpful, so you don't get overwhelmed. That's just as simple as I can put it. Just make it as small as possible. And
it's
as
so
simple
relevant to this particular topic that what you tend to come back to is actually riding the waves of your breath.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally. And then and also just
That's beautiful.
Also if you're gonna drop in on a really big wave, there needs to kind of just be a part of you that just says screw it and just because there's you just can't do the mathematical.
Okay, we're starting to round the last corner of our time together, and I wondered if one thing you said, Nassim, in the beginning, and I think Kyle, you were just touching on it then too, and many of you spoke to it, but you talked about this moment where you hit the chaos, right? Where you're beginning to ride the wave, and then there's this moment of turbulence or chaos. So as you each kind of share maybe what you've been inspired by in this call and just some things to wrap up, what would be maybe one of those things, like Kyle just said, like with the breath, that you could incorporate when you start to hit that moment where it gets a little chaotic or it gets a little stay so that you can get on that other side where then you're in resonance with the current itself. So let's add one more little practical thing in there. And maybe Nassim.
Yeah, that, for me, it's been like a pretty crazy ride throughout this last 25 years. And I can think of many, many instances, and I'm forgetting many, maybe on purpose, where there was a lot of chaos. And there was, moments of great discouragement, despair even, and so on. And one thing, and certainly in my earlier life, that was definitely true. And one thing I learned, I guess that's what's called wisdom or something, throughout the years, is that when I feel that chaos, when I feel that everything is going up in flames and the stress is overwhelming, everything is not lining up, is to, instead of trying to push harder and waste energy, like Carl was saying, like when you're caught behind on big sets, and we experience big sets here on Kauai quite a bit in Hanalei, and I got caught behind in Hanalei a bunch of times. And because like the thing about riding big waves for me is not so much the riding of the waves, is when you miss the wave and you get the set on the head. And so what I learned is that it's gonna pass. This set that's hitting you right now will pass, and you will come back out. And if I can just stay calm, if I can just continue to breathe appropriately and be in the molasses, as everything around me goes, chaotic, then from past experiences, I know it will go to the next level. I know that this is just a momentary disturbance so that the energy can find its new level of resonance at a higher level of energetic interaction. And so this is what I've learned throughout my years in these chaotic moments. And it's very much related to the breath and coming back to that center point, and whatever I have to do for that to happen, meaning, you know, if I got to walk away from the circumstance, if I got to, you know, whatever I got to do to make that happen, instead of continuing to push, just allowing, you know, whatever is happening to be happening, because that's what's happening for a reason, and just go back to my center and then move with the wave as it moves to the next level.
Mm.
Mm.
Hmm. Thank you.
That reminds me of a time when I was out windsurfing, and I was pretty far out in Lake Michigan, too far out given that a storm was coming, and pretty soon the wind was kicking up to levels I hadn't anticipated, and the stem of my mast on the my sail on the windsurfer snapped off. So I was out in the middle of the bay like this, and there was just enough left that I could stick it in a little hole on the deck, and if I kept things just perfectly in balance, I could move. And so I was quite afraid, and started just kind of settling back into the groove of, you know, pulling against the wind and finding that groove where it took off. And I realized I was really afraid of falling because I don't know how I would have put it back together. And what I found that I started doing is singing.
Mm.
It was so over the top for me that I was just like, and all of a sudden I was ridiculously enjoying this very scary situation. And I think that was the universe telling me the lesson that Kyle was talking about go back to something simple. Make sure that you're breathing and actually allowing your natural coordination to find the harmony in this situation. And I've had similar things like that with you know, pressure situations in public, or, you know, backlash since Thrive came out from vested interests who don't want to have certain information out there. Whatever the particular medium is, I do think that the principles are always the same.
Mm. Thank you,
You
guys.
know,
Hey,
everybody's mentioned breathing, and I just want to say that when you do that kind of breathing, it actually modulates the heart rhythm, whether you know it or not, and which all gets back to the heart. You know, we have a technique that I use all the time called inner ease, and you're focusing in the heart, and you're consciously breathing as if through the heart area, and you're breathing a feeling of ease. Ease is like an onomatopoeia. You know, the word feels like it says. And research is showing if you do that, it'll help you come back into sync really quickly for the little, you know, challenges throughout the day, because each one can bleed energy or gain energy. And so I love that state of inner ease, and come back to it, because that's what you're all talking about in your own way. And being able to breathe ease and come back to that, to me, is what allows the flow to come back to you.
Thank you, Deborah. Hey, Jesse, how about we go to the slide that we have there about what we have coming up? Because instead of just having this hangout, we decided that this conversation was worth continuing. So we're going to have a Riding the Waves of Change mini hangout series, and it's going to last for an entire month. So we can keep this conversation going and support us to share our wisdom and mastery as we learn to ride the waves of change more fully. And this week's guests include Kimberly Gamble, Foster's wife and co-creator of Thrive, also Kyle's mom. It's nice to have the family all together. Dwayne Elgin, Barbara Hubbard, and Richard Rudd. And we have other exciting guests that are going to happen throughout the next 4 weeks. So be sure to stay with us, and we'll be sending you a link to our new Riding the Wave of Change campaign page on Monday. There's another surprise coming, but we weren't quite ready to show you yet. So you'll be getting that in an email as well. So we want to wish you a very happy summer solstice, whatever you're doing to celebrate that. And Nassim, I wondered if you want to share a few words of closing as we move through the summer solstice.
Well, thanks, Teresa, and again, like, thanks to our guests, Carl, Barbara, and Foster, of course, and thank you, Teresa, for facilitating this. I mean, it's so awesome that we can connect this way. It used to be much more difficult. We actually had to fly and, get in hotels and all this stuff. And so it's really wonderful. I want to thank as well all the contributing members, all the people out there, supporting this, spending time, evolving with us, and doing what is necessary we must do at this time in history, during this important moment in our evolution, to transform ourselves and transform the way the world around us function, the mechanics of our society, so that we can become not only sustainable but thrive. And I think, it's a really remarkable thing that we can bring all these leaders in the world pushing this change forward, and have all these people in their living room enjoying the conversation we have over the phone or on Skype calls and so on with each other, and actually bring everybody into the fold, because we need every single person out there to contribute and participate and put their 2 cents in any shape, way, or form that they can, because it's critical at this time. So thank you to everybody out there.
We also have a picture of the team, Nassim, of the RPF staff I wanted to put on, because they all want to say thank you also to all of you, our guests, and to our contributing members. And it's a really great team, and there's one other, go again, Jesse. You'll see them all jump for joy for the solstice and saying thank you to our contributing members. There they go. And then we'll close on our last slide. And thank you again, Foster and Deborah and Kyle. You guys have been amazing tonight. And Nassim, blessings to you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.